It's an ordinary afternoon. Nothing has gone obviously wrong, but something is off with my son, and I can feel it before I can name it. The way you learn to read the air in a house after enough years. He's louder than usual, which for him means very loud. He's moving through the condo with that particular quality of motion I've learned to recognize. Not quite purposeful, not quite lost. Somewhere between the two. Choppy, a little too fast around the corners. And Rosco, who had been settled on his bed, is no longer settled. He's up. He's tracking. His eyes are following my son around the room with an alertness that is not relaxed curiosity. It's something more like vigilance. His body is still, but it's the wrong kind of still, held, not resting. My son doesn't notice. He's already somewhere inside whatever is building in him, and there's no bandwidth left for reading the dog. He moves past Rosco too close, too fast. Voice at full volume mid-sentence. Rosco flinches. Small, quick. The kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't watching. And then he repositions himself, just slightly further away. Nobody did anything wrong. And yet something is happening in that room that, if I don't intervene, will keep escalating on its own. This is the moment I want to talk about. This is Under the Same Roof. I'm Jennyfer, certified family dog mediator and professional dog trainer, and this is episode 5. We've been building toward this one. We've talked about how learning works in a nervous system under stress, about the stress bucket and what fills it, about what our dogs are living through inside a neurodivergent household when nobody's watching them closely enough to see it. This episode is about what happens when both nervous systems are activated at the same time. When your dog is escalating and your child is escalating and they are feeding each other, not because anyone is doing anything wrong, but because that's what nervous systems do when they're in the same room together. I've been in that room more times than I can count, and I want to talk about it honestly, because I don't think it gets named enough. There's a concept in human neuroscience and in the science of animal behavior called co-regulation. The idea is this: nervous systems don't operate in isolation. They respond to each other. A calm nervous system in the room can help a dysregulated one settle, and a dysregulated nervous system in the room can pull a calm one toward activation. We see this with dogs constantly. A tense handler produces a tense dog, even when the handler is doing everything technically right. A panicked guardian at the vet makes the already anxious dog harder to examine. The dog isn't reading the situation independently. He's reading the person and calibrating accordingly. But it works the other way too. And this is the part that matters for families like mine. When my son is dysregulated, when his voice is too loud, his movement too erratic, his frustration spilling into the physical space around him, Rosco's nervous system responds. Not because Rosco is making a decision about it, not because he's judging my son or reacting to anything intentional, but because his nervous system is doing exactly what it was built to do, scanning the environment, picking up signals, and adjusting his own state accordingly. Two nervous systems reading each other, both of them escalating, neither of them choosing to. What makes this dynamic so hard to catch and so hard to interrupt is that it's invisible until it isn't. It doesn't start dramatically. It starts with Rosco, a little more alert than he was 5 minutes ago. It starts with my son's voice, a fraction louder than when he came in. Small things, building on each other, feedback looping in a way that has no obvious beginning and no obvious solution if you wait too long to notice it. And when you're the parent in that house, you're often the last to see it. Because you're tracking your son. You're reading the early signs in him, trying to figure out what's driving it, trying to decide whether to engage or give space, trying to regulate your own response, so you don't add a third dysregulated nervous system to the room. You're already doing 3 things at once before you've even registered that the dog is involved. For a long time, Rosco barely registered in those moments. He was in my peripheral vision at best. My son was the priority, and everything else fell away. That's not a failure, that's triage. But it did mean that for a long time, I had no idea what Rosco was absorbing. Here's what I know now that I didn't know then. By the time Rosco is visibly reactive, stiff, hyper-alert, unable to settle, he has already been communicating for a while. The yawn I read as tiredness. The lip lick I didn't notice. The way he quietly got up from his bed and moved to the other side of the room. So smoothly I didn't register it as a choice. Dogs rarely go from fine to not fine in one step. There's a ladder, and Rosco climbs it, rung by rung. The problem is that a household managing a dysregulated teenager doesn't always have anyone watching the ladder. And here's what makes it a feedback loop, rather than just 2 parallel events. Rosco's escalation doesn't stay invisible. At some point, it becomes visible, a bark, a sudden movement, a decision to put himself somewhere he shouldn't be. And that visible escalation adds to my son's environment. Another unpredictable thing, another input into a nervous system that is already overwhelmed, which can tip him further, which Rosco reads, which tips Rosco further. This is not a behavioral spiral, it's a physiological one. Neither of them is being difficult. Both of them are responding to real signals from their real environment. The signals just happen to be each other. I want to be careful about what the solution looks like here, because the instinct, and I've had this instinct myself, is to intervene in the dog, remove him, redirect him, manage him. And sometimes, that's the right immediate call. Creating physical separation when both nervous systems are activated is often the kindest and most practical thing you can do in the moment. But management in the moment isn't the same as understanding what's actually happening. And if your only tool is separating them when things get bad, you're responding to the top of the ladder every time instead of the bottom. What I've had to learn, and what I'm still learning, is to watch for the bottom. For Rosco, the bottom of the ladder is subtle. A shift in his posture, ears a little more forward than relaxed. A stillness that has tension behind it. If I see that and respond, creating some space before things build. Giving him somewhere genuinely quiet to land. Stepping in to interrupt an interaction that's getting too loud or too close. We don't climb. For my son, the bottom of his ladder has its own signals, and after more than 20 years, I know most of them. The quality of the silence before the volume goes up, the way he moves when something is already stacking. I can't always act on what I see in him. Sometimes the right thing is to let him process without intervention. But when I can see both ladders rising at the same time, that's my cue to do something about Rosco's side of the equation, because that's the side where I have more room to act. There is a particular kind of tiredness that comes with holding both of them at once. I don't want to skip past that. It's not the tiredness of a hard task. It's more like the tiredness of sustained attention. The kind that comes from never quite switching off, from always having one part of your awareness on the room, on the signals, on who's climbing and how fast. Most parents of neurodivergent kids know this tiredness already. It's the cost of being the person who tracks everything, and in a household with a reactive dog, that cost gets added to. What I've found is that the answer isn't to track more, it's to track smarter, to know in advance what the early signals look like for each of them, so that when I see one, I know what I'm seeing. To have a plan that doesn't require me to think from scratch every time. To know that when both ladders start rising, I go to Rosco's side first. Not because he matters more, but because that's where I have the most leverage with the least disruption. You don't have to manage both at once. You just have to notice which one you have room to help right now and start there. Most of the time, that's enough to stop the climb. The hardest part of writing this episode is that it doesn't resolve cleanly. My son is older now. He's a young adult navigating the world in ways that genuinely impress me, building the kind of skills I once wasn't sure he'd have access to. Some of what used to happen regularly doesn't happen as often. The sharpest edges of those years have softened. But Rosco is still a reactive dog with a nervous system that stays alert in a busy household. There are still days when the load is high and the feedback loop threatens to start. There are still moments where I'm watching both of them and doing that quiet math of what each one needs and whether I have enough to give it. What's different now is that I see it. I see the loop before it closes. I know what I'm looking for, and I know roughly what to do when I find it. That's not a dramatic transformation. It's just attention, accumulated over time, pointed in the right direction. If you're in a household where this is your reality, a neurodivergent family member and a dog, both of them working hard, both of them occasionally pushing the other toward the edge, I'm not going to tell you it's simple. It isn't. The demands are real, and they don't always leave much margin. But the loop is interruptible, not always, and not at the top, but earlier, when things are still small, when the signals are still quiet. There's usually a moment where one deliberate action can change the trajectory for both of them. That moment is what we're trying to find. Every time. Next episode, I want to step back from the inside of this household and speak directly to families who are still at the beginning, who are standing in front of a decision and trying to get it right. The breed lists, the temperament categories, the websites that say golden retrievers are good with kids. Why none of that is the right question when your child is neurodivergent, and what the right questions actually are. That's next time. I'm Jennyfer Tan. This is Under the Same Roof. Understanding before strategies, always.